in theory, was going to be an Airbnb. And I've started to get a little bit more hesitant about whether or not I want to keep this as an Airbnb. So my buddy Travis, who goes by TheYoungRetireeBy33 on Instagram, is going to come hang out with us. One thing I will tell you guys, I'm going to do my best to keep up with the Instagram bit, but we're also running Facebook and YouTube at the same time, hence my dorky ass headphones. So if you guys are wanting like to make sure we get to a question that you ask, gonna recommend that you hit us up through Facebook or YouTube, ideally. I'm working with Travis here on Facebook and YouTube. How's it going grabbing that?
I don't see a request.
All right.
Where will it pop up?
So it says on my end, you've got to update your Instagram app in order to join me.
Well, yes.
Those of you that are hanging out with us while Travis and I troubleshoot tech support, I appreciate you. In the meantime, you guys have any questions, go ahead and flick them over to me. Be anything real estate related, or I guess not. Chris Quack says, "What's up, Ryan? Nice shirt. Thank you. This is my Bigger Pockets t-shirt. Actually went and got to tour Bigger Pockets headquarters like way before they sold. This was back when they were in kind of a smaller building in Denver. And I got to meet Josh Dorkin, Mindy, several of those people. It was really, really nice. Roy, you've been working out? Yeah, I've been working out and eating less. I find that those two together tends to get me better results. But yeah, thank you. Cool, guys. So those of you that are hanging out with us, any questions you guys have on anything deal finding related before Travis hops on, feel free to flick it over and we'll go over it. Really excited about this because Travis put together a pretty cool detailed insight on how he handles his Airbnbs. A little bit of backstory while we're waiting on him to come hang out with us on this particular property. I bought it from a friend of mine for $210,000, paid cash for it. It's in Fort Walton, like Fort Walton Beach. It's like 10, 15 minutes from the water. Pretty nice, like I would call it A- A class area. It's right at 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,500 square feet. And our initial plan with it was I wanted to try an Airbnb. And I've never done one. So kind of like definitely new for me on just figuring out like all of the details, and how that all will work. So Travis here has got some feedback kind of on the property and what we're thinking about doing with it. Let me fix my audio the way you guys aren't hearing me twice. Sweet. So we are going to kind of just like dive into this deal. I like being like pretty blunt, pretty open on these. So I'm cool with like sharing the address and stuff with you guys. You're going to see it anyway in the analysis that we're going to go over. I've got a video of the property that I'm waiting to that we'll throw up once we've but the property was bought it for $210,000. I will have put right at $50,000 into it in remodel. Took out some walls, did like the open concept. So knocked out some walls, really improved the flow, all of those like buzzwordy real estate things. We are doing totally brand new kitchen. I don't know if they have this thing where you're at, Travis. Do they do like cement backed tile in bathrooms?
Yeah, some of them do.
Okay. So we've got some of that, and we decided just to glaze over it instead of trying to like rip chunks of concrete out of the wall. So we did that in one of the bathrooms. The master bathroom we actually took down to the studs and totally redid. Painted the exterior, replaced some windows. We're kind of doing some of the like trendy, hipstery more things, like we're doing cedar wrapped planks on the outside. So I thought this would be kind of cool for you guys to like just hang out with us while we go through and chat through this. I'm going to walk you guys through like my potential exits with the property, like what I could do with it. and then I'm going to have Travis walk me through on the Airbnb side of it what he would do if this was his deal. So I'm all into the property for $260,000, and I'll be totally blunt with you guys. This one did not fit the 75% rule when I bought it. It was a friend of mine who's a wholesaler in Orlando, got like a random pay-per-click lead and was like, "Hey, do you want this thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Why not? We'll try it." The deal is in like a pretty decent area, but at the time, like all of the comps were like high 200s. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be into this thing for like 250, 260, depending on construction. It's only worth like 300. That's not as much margin as I'm normally looking for. But what convinced me to do the deal, there was a property in similar condition to mine, like not updated at all, pergo flooring, aluminum windows, like all that BS. It had like the old oven, if you guys know what I'm talking about, like just real tiny little thing. On that one, we were trying to just decide, like, do we want to keep this? Do we want to wholesale this? Do we want to flip it? What? But there was this other one that was similar, just as ugly as mine, that sold for 303. So I was like, So I call that an as-is comp. That's always what I'm looking for. Like, if I bought this property today and put it on the market, what could I sell it for? And in this instance, substantially more than what I bought it for. My buddy was actually like, "Oh, you're really like, I'm barely going to be able to eat." He made like 20 grand. So he's fine, right? He wholesaled it to me, just paid an assignment fee. But I was a little like, not really sure what this thing will be worth. I just know I won't lose money on it. Well, fast forward a couple months now that we've owned it. And there was 2 properties that they listed in the neighborhood that were also not updated for 350 and 375 respectively. One sold for 325, the other sold for 350. So I'm pretty confident in mine that's like remodeled at this point, that I could probably sell it for 350, 360, maybe even like a 375. So I'm looking at like, I could sell it, flip it, and I'd probably net high 70s, low 80s, something like that when it's all said and done. The other thing that I'm wanting to start to get into is selling properties on owner finance. So I could sell this property probably for like $350,000 on like an 8.5% interest mortgage, 30-year amortized out. Wouldn't in theory have to even do anything with it, and I'd make $2,200-$2,300 a month in passive income. So I'm trying to make that decision of like, okay, if I've got $250,000, do I want to turn it into $330,000? Do I want to turn that into $2,300 for the next 30 years, or do I want to Airbnb this sucker? So Travis, why don't we start with your analysis? I think that's probably going to be the best way to just like hop into this. Florida's a little weird. I don't know if it's like it where you're at, Travis, but up here, like rent to cost ratios aren't great. Like this house I'm into for 260,000, I could maybe get like 2,100, maybe 2,500 with how nuts the market is right now, but like it doesn't make a ton of sense for me. I don't normally do like the 1% rule. I'm looking for better than that. So conventional rental like doesn't necessarily make sense. My plan when I bought the property, why I was okay with the margins, I was planning on Airbnb. But as I was telling Travis before we hopped on, this property is like an hour one way from my house. And I'm trying to work less, not more. So I was like, all right, Travis, what would you do with this thing? So I'm going to throw your analysis up here, and I'm just going to kind of let you school me on this because you sent this spreadsheet over. Those of you guys that are on Instagram cannot see the spreadsheet, so recommend hitting up my Facebook or YouTube if you want to like visually see it, but we are going to talk through the numbers. So Travis, take it away, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what you really need to focus on when you're analyzing short-term rentals, there's a couple major factors. The first one is understanding seasonality, because that is something that you aren't having to deal with in long term. And it's really important to understand what do occupancy rates look like throughout the course of the year, especially being in Florida. And it looks like this property is fairly close to the beach. Is it near Destin or Ocean City? What?
So we're pretty close to Destin.
Okay.
Like maybe 25 minutes, half an hour, something like
Okay.
that. But we're like closest beach is like 14 minutes away.
Got it. Yeah, no, that is definitely good to know. But so seasonality across the course of the year, occupancy rates is really important. And then the next thing that's extremely important to understand is what the price per night is going to come in at. This is a 3-2. I think you said around 1,500 square feet.
Yep.
Looks like the inside is fairly nice. Would just need to furnish to also take into consideration
Yep.
for this particular analysis, which for a 3-2, I would say is probably going to be anywhere between, depending on how high end or like middle of the pack you want to go. I would guess it's going to come around $12,000 to $18,000 to properly furnish. So we'll definitely want to take that into account. And then really understanding, like I was saying before, what the price per night looks like. And there's some awesome new tools that have just been published from Price Labs, which is the dynamic pricing software that I use for my properties. And you can actually buy a lot of this data and then comb through it's called a market dashboard. You can comb through the market dashboard report, and then you can start to fill in the occupancy rate by month. And really you can look at it by day. It has that granular level of detail. And
you said that was called Price Labs?
Yeah. So Price Labs has a couple different things. One, it's a dynamic pricing tool that a lot of short-term rental operators use. I leverage it.
Sorry, I'm dumb when it comes to short-term rentals. Dynamic pricing, does that mean like it changes based off of like demand in the area on like a daily or weekly basis or something?
Yeah, so I don't know the frequency. I think it's every 24 hours, but it might be shorter than that. What Price Labs does is it aggregates data from different data sources. So Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, all these different booking platforms. And it understands in a general area, like for your specific address, I put a 5-kilometer radius and kind of looked at what properties popped up in that radius and kind of where they were at. But it can see how many people are searching certain dates in your market.
Okay.
So what it can do is it can start understanding, okay, these dates are really, really hot. There's a ton of people searching for these. So then you put in these base parameters in their software and you say, hey, what do I want my minimum night to cost? So what's the very bottom I want this software to go to? What's what like is my base rate? And then what's the high end of whatever you want to put in for your price per night? And then it uses those 3 variables and then we'll dynamically price every single day on your calendar based off of what demand is showing. So what's really, really cool is you don't have to, as an owner, I don't have to spend any time trying to figure out when do I need to charge a lot, when do I not. I have a dynamic pricing software that I have one of my cabins in Tennessee. The low end base per night is like 120. The high end is 650. So there's a massive gap in there.
That's huge.
Yeah, and what we're going to see here on the end too, once we get to it, is understanding like the difference between a good operator and a bad operator in a short-term rental in the short-term rental management space could be like 30 to 40% gross that you're losing out on. So it's a massive difference. If you're not utilizing these softwares, you're missing out on thousands of dollars, and they cost for one property. It costs $14 a month.
So you said this one was Price Labs. I think the other one I've heard of is AirDNA. Have you used that one?
So AirDNA is so AirDNA and MashVisor were the 2 big websites that people use to purchase or not really purchase the data, but be able to view the data. They combine things across multiple platforms, similar to what the Market Dashboard and Price Labs did. Price Labs used to just be a dynamic pricing tool, and that was their only business model. But what they turned into recently was realizing that like real estate investors like us need to be able to analyze deals. And because they were already doing all of the dynamic pricing, they knew when stuff got booked and they knew how much it got booked for. So then they just took all that data and then made this nice report that now people can purchase.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So why don't you walk me through what I'm looking at on this? Because I like what I'm seeing on the cash flow end, I'm not liking what I see on how many cleanings have to happen and how many turns have to happen.
Yeah. So my properties right now are doing anywhere between 2 to 4 turns a week. It kind of just depends on, and that's a week, not a month. It
Okay.
really just depends on length of stay, but certain times of the year it might be shorter. Other times of the year you may have people that are commonly booking 7 to 10 days. But what we're looking at here is essentially a sensitivity analysis spreadsheet to understand at different occupancy and nightly rates based off the data that I purchased for a 5 kilometer radius for this particular property, what the cash flow numbers could look like. So
Okay.
I just put a base assumption of 35 turns per year. I think that's on the low end, but it at least gives us a starting point. So essentially, you're hosting 2 to 3 people a month, which you should host more. But and then the second item is the cleaning charge to the guest. This is important because what a lot of investors and people commonly ask is like, hey, why do you, like, in all of my monthly reports, I put cleaning as income, because the reality is you're charging that back to the guest. You should be charging that back to the guest. So I may, in this market, and I don't know exactly what the prices would be, but I'm going to guess based off of the 3.3 I manage in PCB, which isn't far from where this is at. I would guess that a 3.5 is probably going to cost like $140, $150. But if you charge guests $180, then you're making that $40 difference. But the reality is that $40 difference helps you purchase supplies or whatever, like kind of all of the supplies that you have and natural things.
Toilet paper, trash bags, detergent, that kind of stuff. So the charging that back to them, that's like the cleaning fee that I've paid when I've personally booked Airbnbs. That's not something after the fact of like, like a damages thing. So that's not a surprise to them. They know that they're paying that up front.
Yeah. And it's extremely, I always tend to be on the higher side in cleaning fees versus the market, because if you think about as a guest, typically you're not saying, hey, because this cleaning fee was $20 more, I'm not going to book this place. Usually you're like, hey,
I couldn't even tell you what I've paid for cleaning fees. Like, it's just either the total price works or it doesn't.
Exactly. And people don't understand. Like, I tell people all the time, hey, raise your cleaning rates. And they're like, why do I want to raise my cleaning rates? I'm like, $15, $20 added up across 30, 40 turns a year starts to add up quickly. But as guests, like people that are booking your place, they don't really care. So all of that to say, making sure that you're charging more than what you're paying for is important. And cleaning is income. I look at it as income, not just the expense. But what you can see here is the different occupancy rates. This is looking at real data that we have for a 5 kilometer radius of this place. And essentially, if we look at row 8 specifically, so if we were target the month of January, we're looking at an average occupancy of 50%. With the 50th percentile nightly rate. So that what that means is essentially, where is the median, like where is the middle of the pack property, like what is the cost per night for the 50th percentile. The 75th percentile means essentially the top 20, the top 25%, that 25th percent, like what is their cost per night. And then what you can see off to the right is a detail of what the 50th and 75th percentile nightly income would be based off of those rates and occupancy. Add in the cleaning fees. One other thing I also do at my properties, which people talk about a lot, is not realizing that, like, hey, you're also, depending on the county that you're operating in, you're also going to be remitting taxes back to the county. Different counties, different states do different things, and each market is unique. Some you just need like a business license and it's super cheap. Some you need a license, plus you need like my Kissimmee properties, you have to have like 2 different licenses, and then you have to pay 5% tourism tax back to the county each month. But the cool thing about what Airbnb did last year is they actually added a section where you can add your tax ID to Airbnb's website, and then you can add that tax back to the guest as well, and it'll just kind of funnel up in their total taxes. Like, you know how when you'll go and you'll see the nightly rate, taxes, cleaning, and if there's anything else, Yeah. Well, like the cool thing is you probably don't look at the taxes either. You're probably just like, it's taxes. Like I'm going to pay it. So what I actually do is whatever I'm remitting back to the county, I'm actually adding that back to the guest. So that's also another source of income. In this particular analysis, I did just 3% as a like target, but as far as like 3% of the nightly income would, or the gross income would be the $58.
I like putting all of the like extra BS you have to pay for on the guests. Like that's appealing.
It's super appealing, and like so often I see people not doing it, and I'm just like, you're just losing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars. And especially when you talk about then having, like I have 6 now. Like if you start talking about having 10, 20 properties, now you're talking like significant difference in potential cash flow.
Okay. So is it cool if I just like ask some questions on this?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So did you run this as like 3-bedroom, 2-bath places? Like, is it like running comps on the MLS where we can go like by square footage? Okay. So these are only 3-bedroom places.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess my only my concern, because I know like, data can tell us one thing. We often call like pro formas like pro facas because it doesn't go quite as planned. But on this, I guess my concern being as close as I am to the water, one of my concerns is a lot of those properties that are pulling in more are ones that are just in a better location. Mine's not in a bad location. It's super accessible. It's super convenient. But do you find, because I mean, you've got some stuff in Florida as well. Do you find like proximity to the beach makes a huge difference? Or like, is it possible to end up in the 75th or 80th percentile just by having like a really cute, really well done, nice photographed property?
Yeah, so that brings up a really good point. So there's 2 main things. I believe make the difference between location and when you start, that so that you can kind of see the markets in some of the areas, not as location to Airbnb than some that are probably closer to the beach. I think when I was looking at the report, you were a little bit too far northwest from, or maybe it was just straight north from like where the solid areas are. So that's like the first factor. The second factor is just generally how nice is the property. So like, what does the inside of the property look like? What amenities do you have that's unique to your property and your area? Because there's a bunch of cool things that you can do depending on what market you're in, and if it's beach, if it's mountains, if it's whatever. So that does make a big difference as well. You want, like, Airbnbs are about creating experiences. So
got it.
Having some unique, having things that are just cool about the property are really important.
Okay, got it. So that makes sense. So like the property's got
for this property. Yeah, I would say for this property specifically, I would guess that you are like operating it.
Like, okay, got it. So like one of the things that's
like if you're
more unique with this particular is it's got a pretty nice backyard. So I could see making that, doing like the Christmas light kind of hipstery thing and maybe grill, sitting area, that kind of thing. Other than that, I mean, it's kind of just like a typical single family house. It doesn't have a pool, which is a big plus, obviously, for kind of vacation rentals in Florida.
Yeah, and I thought I was going to pull there, but that would be a big draw, or that would be one of the draws because a lot of people do come to Florida to be out in the sun, go to the pool, go to the beach.
Okay.
So.
Got it. For any of you guys that are hanging out with us on Facebook, YouTube side, I think we're having a little bit of like connection issues. We're also on Instagram. If you want to come hang out with us there, because I'm getting some complaints of it not working. So just kind of looking through this, Travis, you've basically got kind of two cash flow scenarios. You've got 44,000 for the year if we're in the 50th percentile, and 52,000 if we're in the 75th. Now, are you including any like insurance, taxes, utilities, anything like that? Or is that just like straight, is this like more of a revenue, not necessarily a profit or cash flow?
Yeah, so if you actually, I have those cells open for you to input whatever numbers you feel are real. So cleaning you can keep empty for now, but like you can input mortgage, whether or not there's a HOA, cable, internet, taxes, insurance, and whatever capex that you want to put away for each month.
Okay.
And then once you do that, then you'll be able to tell what the true cash flow numbers look like.
Okay. So the 44 to like 50,000 is basically gross, not accounting for the
Correct.
expenses that we have in there. I mean, I saw the filters in there. That's great. So realistically on that property, I'm imagining, between insurance and taxes, that's at least 200 a month. From what I pay in utilities at my house, I mean, that's probably minimum another 300. I don't know if that tracks for kind of like what you're normally seeing. So I can basically assume that we're going to be like, ideally, it's probably actually going to be worse than this. There's probably going to be about 6,000 in expenses that I'm not billing back to guests. Does that sound accurate to you on the course of a year? Yeah. So if I'm paying
say that again,
just for easy
6,000
math, let's
for the
call it
year.
$100 for like insurance, $100 for taxes, and like 300 in utilities. So 500 a month over the course of the year. That's like $6,000. So realistically, like assuming, I think the utilities would be higher some months, lower other months based off of, fall and stuff. Our electric bills right now suck because Florida summer. So that 44,000 realistically is probably going to be like 38,000, or maybe even 35,000 if we're being conservative. And the 52,000 would end up being more like mid to high 40s. Does that sound accurate to you? Okay. So, I guess if I'm looking at this from like what do I want to do with this property scenario? We basically are either looking at I could potentially net 3,000 to 4,000 a month in profit. Does that sound reasonable? I mean, that'd be 36 to 48.
Should be. Yeah, that should be probably on the high end. I would say high to
one more time. What was that?
I would say high to mid twos to like 4.
Okay. Okay. So you said mid 2s to low 4s. Okay.
Yeah.
Because my kind of thought process with it is just like, it's my own cash that I've got into the deal. We're not here to talk about inflation or any of that. I don't feel like I'm smart enough to talk about it. But I'd rather have my own cash in this deal right now, sitting in my checking. So I'm okay with that. My thought process was like, if I can pull in 3,000 a month or more, on average, then I would likely keep the property. So it sounds like that's not out of the realm of possibility. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and then the only other thing you would need to factor in would just be the furnishing cost up front.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. So the 260 I'm into it for is realistically probably going to end up being like 275.
Mm-hmm.
So am I okay making $36,000 a year off of 275 grand, or is there a higher and better usage for that capital? I think is ultimate. I mean, obviously I'm not expecting you to answer this for me. This is this was kind of my goal with this video, is to just kind of know, like, what am I really looking at? Um, if we can chat just a little bit about what kind of work would go into pulling in 3,000 a month on this place. I mean, it sounds like with the cleaning, I'm assuming you just find like a couple local housekeepers, have probably like favorite and then some backups, and get them on like a kind of just a schedule to go out and clean it when you have turns. Is that how you handle it?
Yeah, so it's actually so the most important thing is finding your cleaners. The For short-term rental operators, you really want to have two different people that they're like your core team members. The first one is your maintenance guy. Really, really important to have a good GC that can go in and fix things. And then the second one is really good cleaners, because they're going to be your eyes and ears, boots on the ground, and they're going to be going to your property the most
All the
often.
time.
So
No, that makes they're more.
yeah, um,
You're like a, how do I put this? Like a handyman that's like, yo, let me phone, get some, are you using a established that has crew?
hold on one second. I'm getting connected back on my phone.
Yeah, good, man.
Can you still hear me?
Appreciate you guys rolling with our, just I can.
Okay, cool. But yeah, so your maintenance guy and your cleaners, and a lot of the cool things, and I talk about this a lot in my guide, but you can automate a lot of the things that are out there right now as far as scheduling go. So
Okay.
what I do with my cleaners is actually kind of cool with the software that I'm using. So every time I get a new reservation, it automatically messages my cleaners, and it's through text or email, whatever they prefer. And it'll tell them, hey, this is Travis. Just wanted to let you know I received a new booking for this property from this date to this date. Please schedule a cleaning for 10 a.m. on checkout day and confirm.
Is that done
And
through
that
Price
automatically gets
Labs?
sent to them. Yeah, it's actually a different software called SmartBnB. So there's a couple different tools that are out there today. SmartBnB is one, Your Porter's one. It really depends on who you talk to on like what they like and what
Okay.
people are using. But this software is really, really awesome. It's another one of the key items that saves me. It probably saves me like 15 to 20 hours a week at least right now,
Yeah, no,
with
I mean, that would be huge.
coordination. Yeah, and it messages guests and a lot of other features there. So,
Okay.
but that's the first one. And then for maintenance, I've had two different scenarios really. One scenario is I have a maintenance guy who is like my main guy that I go to, but I'm always playing phone tag where it's like the cleaner, if something needs to get fixed, will message me and then I'll message him. I do have a cleaner maintenance guy in the Smoky Mountains, so my cleaners actually have a maintenance guy that they put me in contact with, and what they said is like, hey, if something's serious and we need him to come out, like we'll just call him directly, so I don't have to play phone tag of like them calling me and then hopefully I'm on my phone,
Okay.
me calling him and coordinating that. So if you can find anybody like that, that's awesome. It's very, very rare. So like I was saying, I have two different setups. And then cleaners, I've gone through cleaners. You're going to go through cleaners. Like that's just part of the business. You hope to try to find a good one, and when you find a good one, you don't want to get rid of them because
Okay.
they are extremely important and harder and harder to find, especially since COVID and all the government stuff. But those are the two most important things.
Have you
That
ever had
is
a
really
cleaner just
important.
like not show up so the next guest gets there and it's like dirty and gross?
I have,
sucks.
that will happen. So this was before I was fully transitioned over to the new software, and
Okay.
I scheduled my cleaner, and this was a brand new cleaner too. So I just switched cleaners. I scheduled my cleaner for the following day, but at this time I was still super paranoid about like making sure my units were clean, which I don't even check anymore because I trust my processes are solid enough in place. But I scheduled them for the following day, and I looked every day when my cleaners were supposed to be there. I was looking at my smartphone apps for the key lock, and I was seeing whether or not anybody went in the door.
Got it.
So I could like pull up the history and see if they had gone in. And it was like 6 p.m. and they hadn't gone in yet. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, this property hasn't been cleaned. I knew it was locked, so I knew they couldn't get in. And I called them and they said, hey, we're not scheduled for today. We're scheduled for tomorrow. And the guests got there like 2 hours later. Luckily, I told them, hey, go out to a nice dinner on me. Send me the receipt. I'll shoot you the money. That's going to happen. Like, you got to figure out how you're going to adjust and handle the hospitality side with the guests. But
I think I got like
cool
secondhand embarrassment / stress for you. Like that to me just, although I think you handled it well. Like, hey, go out to a nice dinner. I'll eat the bill for it.
Yeah.
You said, so it sounds like with the contractors, these aren't Angie's List people. These are more like handyman-esque. They can kind of fix, they're probably not going to fix your HVAC. You're gonna have to bring in a third party for that. These are more your like, hey, somebody punched a hole in a door, replace the door kind of stuff.
Handles, toilets, yeah, all that.
Okay. So you mentioned something else that I don't know if you want to answer or not, but I've always been curious about this. So, because I've only ever been on the guest side of Airbnbs. Do you actually change the code between guests?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just started. Now I'll say a lot of hosts probably don't.
Okay.
But I just started using this new software. So that I actually found from a buddy, Grassroots, Scriven, and Mark, myself, Mark Horton, myself, and Scriven will meet once a month just to talk about our Airbnb stuff. But he told me about this new, or sorry, it was actually Mark that told us about a new software called Remote Lock, something like that.
Okay.
And what they do is they have an integration with Airbnb and a couple different platforms, and you buy a certain type of lock, you connect it to their software. Every time you get a booking, it'll create a new code. I used to manually create codes, and I actually haven't updated my guide yet. I need to update it, but now I pay $60 a year for this service, and it'll automatically create codes. The awesome thing too is it doesn't create a code until whatever time that you want before their scheduled check-in.
That's solid.
So like guests can't like utilize that code to get into the property before they're supposed to get in.
Okay.
And it also deactivates automatically at the end of their stay. So
does it send them the code? Like, does it integrate with Airbnb for you?
Yep. Yeah. So it has an API with Airbnb, and the second you book I have all properties but one on this still. But the second you book my property, it'll automatically send you your code. And like, thank you for your reservation at this location, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. No, that's super neat. I guess another like concern I've got is like more on the HVAC side. Are you using like smart thermostats or anything like that? Because I mean, what I've found, if you give people an inch, they tend to take a lot more. So, like I remember right when crypto stuff popped off, a friend of mine who I won't name because I still think this was dirty, found a rental property that included free electricity and just filled it with mining rigs. And I was like, bro, that is not what that guy has in mind. So like I've seen with tenants when we've provided like washer and dryers or like a common washer and dryer area, it becomes like the neighborhood free laundromat. So I guess I just want to make sure on like the AC side that, somebody's not out there, kicking the air conditioning down to, 50 degrees at night.
Yep. So I have Nest thermostats in all of my properties. I'm debating maybe changing over to something else just because of some dumb limitations that Google has on the number of thermostats that you can have on one property and limiting how many properties you have. But I'm
Okay.
at the point now where I have to like create a second login just to be able to add all my thermostats to the app. But I set controls on what they can control the temp to. So I don't let them go below 69 degrees. I don't let them go above 77, 78.
Okay, cool.
You know, Florida, so it's not. It usually doesn't get.
Yeah, but you've got the snowbirds that are like, I want it to be 93 in the house.
Oh, I've had plenty of people like make comments, and I'll just make the adjustment for them if they want like a couple degrees higher, a couple degrees lower.
Okay.
I'll accommodate, but generally speaking, people aren't complaining about it. Like it locks them; they can't do anything about it. So it's super convenient, and will save you a crap ton of money.
Okay, cool. Matthew asked the name of the software. Matt, it's Remote Lock. It's remotelock.com. They've got smart locks for Airbnb hosts. That's super, super cool, actually. So, all right, let's kind of like wrap this up because I appreciate people hanging out. I appreciate you hanging out, but I don't want to take your whole night from you. Realistically, how many hours a week do you think it takes you to like, if I was going to say, hey, Travis, this is just like your house now. How much time do you think it would take you to run and manage this asset?
Yeah, I would say right now I'm averaging between 20 to 30 minutes of property a week. And that's just handling some like additional miscellaneous stuff as far as questions from guests. Like I was saying, a lot of my stuff is automated. And then the maybe occasional text out to my GC that like, hey, I need you to go over to this property to fix something and tell me what the bill is. So I think like between 25 and 30 minutes per property per week is what
Okay.
roughly I'm spending right now.
So that's not, I mean, so you're talking 2 hours a month to potentially pull in 2,500 to $4,000. I mean, that's not bad. Like I can't complain about that ROI.
Now I will say, I will just put the caveat that that's with all of the systems and processes that I've put in place. So the majority of operators are not spending 25 to 30 minutes a week per property. The majority of operators typically are going to be looking at spending 2, 3, 4 hours of property a week. So
Okay.
it's really based off all the different processes and things that I've put in place operationally to pull myself out of the business and really drive as much automation as possible.
One of the guys asked, what's the property management software you're using? I think that was the one you did the analysis through, right?
So the PMS is technically, I guess what they would call PMS is SmartBnB, and then Price Labs is the dynamic nightly pricing software.
So your like tool stack, if we will, is like SmartBnB, Property Labs, Price Labs, Remote Lock, and then like Nest Gear. Is that
exactly? Yep.
You mentioned a couple times because I do want to make sure like I want to read it, but you've got some sort of like a guide or ebook or something on this.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to my page, I have a guide, 120 pages that I literally detail out step by step how to analyze the property, how to set up all these softwares with your listing, and how to like what message sequencing to put, how to write the messages, and then how to do all the different integrations.
What's the cost of your ebook?
$149.
$149. Okay, cool. I mean, you said 120 pages, and I was like, bro, that's a lot of work if you're just giving that sucker out.
I spent 300 hours on it.
Yeah, no, I mean I think that makes perfect sense, especially, I'm one of those, like the whole reason we're doing this, I didn't want to try to reinvent the wheel and me like bull in a china shop through it. I've learned that that's not the best way to learn new things. So, okay, that sounds super solid. Last question I'll throw out that somebody else put up. Your like various softwares you use, what is your monthly cost for those?
So Price Labs they have a weighted pricing based off how many properties. I think I'm at $12 a property right now on that. SmartBnB is like $12 to $14 depending on the properties, so 26. and then remote lock is 60 for the year. So
It's not
it's
bad.
super cheap.
Yeah,
$5
no,
a month.
that's not bad at all. For those of you guys that are watching this on Instagram, when we get off, and I didn't tell Tyler I was going to do this. I don't get a cut of this or anything, but I'll throw a swipe up to his ebook just because I'm going to snag it. I view this kind of as one of those things. Like, I feel like it's becoming more and more of a strategy investors are turning to. So it's just something that I would like to know the ins and outs of. Whether I decide to get rid of this property, which I think I'm leaning towards, or go the kind of the whole Airbnb route, I think it's just going to be good to know. The one thing I'll throw out just for, kind of those of you guys hanging out with us, I would be very, very careful about buying properties if Airbnb is your only way to make money on it. I think Travis probably agrees with me on that, but I have a number of friends, a number of followers that even hit me up when COVID hit. Like, I'm in trouble. Or like, I think it's also like you mentioned earlier, local municipalities handle taxes and things in different ways. There's one of my followers, 5 or 6 condos in Honolulu, and they came out and said it was under 30 days. And it was like he had these places that was the only cash flow on them, and the market just got flooded with all the Airbnb owners dumping their properties. So I think it's a good strategy. I'm exploring it on this, but I've also seen people like buy properties that they can only make on through Airbnb. And, if you're in a vacation rental area, like, I mean, honestly, you're in like Destin or something, there's people that buy multi-million-dollar property. That's all they do with them, and they do very well. I think particularly Airbnb, if you're not so much in like a tourist destination, like Indianapolis, where a lot of rentals are, like a lot of people aren't like, oh, let's go to Indy. It's great this time of year. They're there for a race or for, Final Four or a game or something, not necessarily like super consistently. So just kind of little like caveat there, kind of always do your own due diligence. But Travis, I appreciate you hopping on and hanging out. This was like super enlightening for me personally, so I really appreciate it. I hope that the people that kind of hopped on feel similar. I've just kind of seen a lot of the comments that people definitely have enjoyed this, but I went from having a house that my extent of Airbnb knowledge was like, it looks like it would rent for like, I don't know, 150, to like really understanding what goes into this, some of the people, some of the tools. So this was super enlightening for me, man. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. When we get off, if you'll DM me the link to your book so I can throw it up for them. Guys, one thing I'll tell you, like just blunt / plug for Travis. This is how you hack your way through life. This is how you get to where you want to go faster. There's so many people I know that are in the like, don't pay for information. Oh, YouTube University. Like, that's BS. Yeah, I put YouTube content out there, but there's a reason why the folks that are in our mastermind group do a lot of deals. And there's things that we don't put on YouTube to make there be value in that for them. So similarly, like, I know Travis answered a lot of questions, was super blunt, but I don't know the messages to use. I don't know the sequence or the flow or anything. I recently joined a coaching group for ecom that was like $30,000 for the year. Out of that, one of the things I got was a 9-figure biz, entire email, SMS. I was like, yeah, $30,000 alone. Well, I'm going to take this to use it for my own purposes. So, highly recommend you get interested in. I've always done. I look for it seems very to earth headed, like they're better at than I am. That's on with us, just being super blunt and honest. Oh man, I'll let you know when I decide to get this one. My employees are like, keep it, and I'm kind of thinking like might not be a bad idea to hold on to it for a little bit, or maybe I hold on a year and then 1031 exchange something else. I know it's not going to go value in the next year. So I'm not really worried about that, but I'll let you know what I end up doing with it. And maybe we end up doing kind of a part 2 on this.
Awesome.
Cool,
Thanks for having
man.
me,
I
man.
appreciate you.
Excited to see it.
Flick me that link and I'll throw that up on Instagram for anybody who wants it.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.